Excited to have Ronald Tracy Robinson. He is running for District 8. Baby,
Hmm.
when I tell you this young man is a inspiration to me. So, Mr. Robinson, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know a little bit about you, but tell the world.
Alrighty. My name is Ronald Tracy Robison. I'm running for City Council in District 8. My background is I'm an inventory specialist for General Electric. I work in distribution center called Home and Distribution. And what that pretty much is seeing all the numbers of what's coming in as far as freight goes that's going into the warehouse. And once it gets to the dock, where do I put them inside of the warehouse so I can let the operators know, which would be the forklift drivers, basket drivers, the clam drivers, and they get the boxes and they put them in their respective place. But it seems pretty simple on paper, but the decisions that I make for where the boxes go is going to affect the warehouse later on. So it doesn't just stop there where I just kind of place it there and then everything is all right. I got to consider if it's going to be safe for the operators. Is it going to be, um, am I making do with the space that's available? Um, and am I putting it into an area where the most busy items are coming in, where I get the most traction, and as opposed to going putting into the back areas, back aisle of the base, where the less frequent items are going. So there's a lot of things I got to consider, and going into my candidacy, it kind of gave me a framework about how I approach things as far as the logistics goes, and as far as how much things may cost, what is the manpower needed for it to be done, um, what is to be sacrificed in order for it to move forward. That's more or less the regular way that I approach issues dealing with the candidacy because of the background that I've gotten in that field that I'm working in right now. So it kind of gives a little bit of insight about not only the apparent consequences that we see, but also the unseen consequences as well.
Okay. Now, tell us, how does all of that tie into why you're running for District
It,
8?
it ties into why I'm running because when the mandates and when the economy was halted or when it was pretty much shut down at the start of COVID-19. Of course, we've been had these issues before, but when government power ended up overreaching its boundaries and it affected the economies, within the states, being a distribution center of products and goods, um, that affected us directly as far as our working environment. So what that did for me was put in perspective that whatever that they do directly affects not only people's personal lives but their work lives as well, where the people were fired for a good period of time or furloughed for a period of time because their jobs had to scale back the operating capacity to operate their jobs, or people just got let go because their skill set wasn't deemed essential enough to keep them on board for how much they had to pay to adjust for new health measures, for new things they had to do to accommodate the lockdowns. And it affected, it didn't affect my job too much, but it affected thousands of others, and other people's lives were affected by it. So, and it trickled down to a very local level. And that's what prompted me to go ahead and, among a myriad of other things, to run for city council because I can get in. Well, once I get into city council, my job will be to protect my constituents from those harmful mandates that changed everyone's lives for not the best.
Okay, now I'm gonna talk. One of the things that did change everyone's life dramatically was COVID. So I've heard you speak on the issue of the vaccine mandates. Can you kind
Right.
of take us guided through us?
Well, as far as the vaccine mandates go, people shouldn't be talking to their employer about a medical decision that they can make for themselves with their own discretion. You should talk to your doctor, and it should be a personal matter and a privatized matter. Nothing should it have to, it shouldn't have anything to do with what government says or what they shouldn't do. Of course, you got the CARES Act and things like that, where once the state and when the city takes federal funds and federal money, they have to abide by the rules set by that central government. Because of course, if they're giving us that money and we acquiesce to it, we have to follow their regulations and restrictions. Not only does it hurt us in our work life, but also financially economically, um, and health wise. The lockdowns, what that did was make it a okay. In the beginning, it was fine. It was okay. Put a mask on and stay at home for a few weeks or a couple of weeks, and then everything is going to be fine. But now we're 2 years later into this. Then it turned to okay, take this vaccine or you lose your job. You know, it shouldn't have to be like that at all. And on Indeed.com, about 91% of the jobs that were listed for a long period of time, they required a vaccination before you get employed. It was an actual condition of employment. So you're gonna cut away and cut out within the labor force very qualified people that can add value to the local economy and bring jobs and goods and services that everyone needs. But you're going to make sure that that they're cut out of the labor force because of a vaccine. Mind you, most vaccines take about 5 years to be tested, to be treated, to see what it affects, what it doesn't affect, and if it can make an actual change in someone's body. But this one is a particularly different case because it took, shoot, a little over a year or less than that for it to be approved. You know, a lot of companies getting billions and billions of dollars, such as Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca. These companies making billions of dollars on these pharmaceutical companies distributing these vaccines, and now they're making a condition of employment. And I'm not anti-vaccine, but I'm anti-government putting their decisions into what the local people do with their own health. It shouldn't be like that. It should be privatized, and it should be confidential about what someone puts into their body. It should be consensual. It shouldn't be this medical aristocracy that's being created or medical hierarchy where you're going to be part of this upper class that can participate in society if you take a vaccine, you know, especially a vaccine that has caused, side effects to certain people that already had pre-existing medical conditions. So some people couldn't even go to the local shop, go to a grocery store, go to the parks, go back to work because they didn't take this vaccine. So now you're making it another case of classism, where if you don't take this, then you're cut off from here and you're discriminated against. This past Martin Luther King Day, I made it a fact that let's reflect on the fact that we suffered through medical discrimination, and we have to make sure that we call it out where it stands. So, yeah.
As it is. Now,
Yeah.
what does the average person not know about the federal government, since we're on the government? And I see how it's kind of pushing us, kind of almost forcing society to make these choices, like our will is being taken away. And if you look at it from that angle. So what is one of the things that the average person does not understand about the federal government?
The average person is uninformed about, and like I said, it's not even their fault. It's the fact that when you have a centralized power of any shape or form, it takes away the will of the many for the benefit of the few. Back in 1787, when the Constitution was ratified during that time, well, even before that, you had ratifying conventions in Philadelphia, where you had two different classes and two different parties. You had the Federalist Party, which would be the Alexander Hamiltons of the world, where they wanted a strong central government in order to regulate commerce and defense. Then you had the other side, which would be the Anti-Federalists. These are the guys who were who made up the more working class and the wealthy merchants of the area that were bringing jobs into the to different various places. Now, the Federalists, they were for the Constitution's ratifications because what they wanted was a strong central authority to render the independent and sovereign states to be rendered as corporations or corporate arms of the federal government and the federal authority, as opposed to independent entities that can make their own decision. The anti-federalists always argued that, look, man, you make this document, it's going to rein back and cut off uh, the capacity of what the states can control within their own lives. So, because on top of the fact that the duties that were enumerated to the federal government supposed to be very few and defined, what the Federalists have done was made it very amorphous, vague, abstract, to where they could regulate pretty much everything, just like how we see today, how they can regulate commerce to the point of before you get a voting poll going on or get people's consent to raise up the debt ceiling, they can just go in and do it themselves under emergency powers. Just like when we went through COVID, they put out these emergency powers, this CARES Act and American Rescue Act. Who can bid on giving out the most money to throughout the states? See, what should have happened during that time, you should have let the private sector, let the local economies deal with this issue or any issue as they will see fit, because Florida is different than Oregon. Virginia is different than Massachusetts. Texas is different than Wyoming. You see? So there shouldn't be no one size shoe fit all solution to any of these issues, such as the minimum wage. What the minimum wage does, you increase the wages of what all these 50 states will have to do to make their economy a little bit better. But wages should be dictated by those states individually within themselves because of varying factors, which would be the cost of labor, and the value they place on individual labor, as opposed to prioritizing job skills and opening up opportunities such as apprenticeships and these things that doesn't acquire the increase of the taxes in the area to accommodate the wage. You can just do that in a privatized manner, just like how you have the paper boys, the shoe shine boys, and the little boys that there were at these gas stations who were apprenticed by the mechanics that go there. They change your tire, they check your odometer, they'll put the gas in your tank, they'll wash it, they go on the windshield, they do all these type of things because it's teaching these young children about solving a problem, gaining a skill with entrepreneurial means, and the spirit of ingenuity is taught by these kids. But when the minimum wage priced them out of the market, because you got to think about it, when you increase the minimum wage, you're making new hirees too expensive to train. They can't come in and just get experience that they need to get a job in the first place, because now they have to put their funds or their wages to allocate them to other areas. So that's what federal government does. It makes the problems that can easily be fixed by you and myself, and they regulate it to hell. They just put all these unnecessary regulations. They print money from the Federal Reserve that devalues the currency. And now we have the highest inflation that we've seen in 40 years, where we have more money in the economy, but it's devalued. And now goods are much more expensive. So even if you save all of your money and keep saving money, say you got a good job and you're saving up your money, inflation is going to devalue that currency and it's eating up your savings account because they keep pumping up more money and more money into the economy. Most of the money that we're using today was printed from last year. I believe it was about 40% of new money that we have in circulation was printed just recently. And it's very bad because we keep complaining about money not circulating within our communities the way they should. Is because, well, number one, we keep asking for the federal government to give us subsidies and to give us handouts that is
Yeah.
going to devalue the currency. So if we don't prioritize other means of investment, such as going for hard money, such as gold or silver, hell, even copper, or even going into stocks that's regulated by local economies, bringing in industries where it benefits that community, then we can invest in those things. So there's many, many options that we can go through to make sure we keep ourselves free of the federal government's money and their influence within our lives, not through how they did it with the states, but into our local cities.
Okay, now hold. Let us take a light break. We'll be right back in about a minute. 1 minute. All right, Ronald, we made it back. Now tell us, how does the federal government tie into the home ownership in Jacksonville? What's going on with the home ownership?
Okay, so back in September of 2020, we had the CDC moratorium enacted. What that was is the CDC moratorium was it came out during the real start of COVID-19 in the very beginning. What the CDC moratorium did after they've fired people from their jobs because they were non-essential or they furloughed them for a long time. Furlough means they just pretty much put you on ice until the job can be able to bring you back out. Now, make sure you look up this furloughing word because it goes into during a time period in COVID-19 when they were saying the economy was just doing fine and businesses were booming. And look how we got these jobs that's created, these brand new jobs. They weren't brand new jobs. It was just jobs that were back in circulation because the government mandates shut them down initially. And so the ones that were furloughed, they came back to start working again. It wasn't because, it wasn't brand new employment because employment was very, very low because they fired them. And they want to say that they want to give the impression that they've created these new jobs, but it was just the old jobs that were already there in the beginning. So keep that in mind. Also, what it does is with these stimulus checks, with these unemployment checks, and these handouts, the people that were renting homes or renting apartments, they were not paying their rent because they were paying for other things. Not saying all of them, but most of them. They were paying for other things in their savings or that's around their life because no one suspected these things to happen. Because like I said, the local economy should have dictated what happens, opposed to having federal government come in and say, you're going to get out, you're going to go home, you're not going to go back into work, you're not going to do this, that, and the third. Because for me, I don't know about anybody else, but if you can feed your family and your kids, that job is pretty essential. Any job is essential where you can make a way for yourself. But leave it up to the federal government to dictate that, we're all going to be in bad shape. So they weren't paying their rent, and the landlords weren't getting their rent paid. They had the mortgage they had to pay on that house, and they used the liquid income from the tenants that they had in order to get on. They want to, pass their homes to to the next generation, that generational wealth that we like to talk about. They're the ones keeping that from us, And also they had mom and pop shops, little businesses that they've been trying to get to for the past 40 years when they were working. So when they retire, they can go ahead and live their life. They can have these homes that they can rent out to people. They're providing a service, with the contract that they've made for themselves between two consenting parties. Like, hey, you want to come in? Hey, that's fine. Pay the rent and I'll provide you room and board. That's great. However, there was a bind. With the CDC moratorium, what you couldn't do was evict the ones who were not paying the rent. They couldn't evict them, even though they violate the contract. So they had to bring the courts in. Now the federal government, they start breaching contract, which should be illegal on all fronts. But when the federal government does it, it's legal now. It's fine. You violate a contract between two parties for this brand new mandate, for this brand new piece of legislation just whipped up at your butt and say, hey, we're gonna go ahead and interrupt this because of a national emergency. We're going to make sure that everyone stays home so that no one spreads COVID. But everybody knows COVID ended up spreading even faster when people were kept into their homes because they're not outside and the overall populace getting their immunization boosted. Because with any disease known to man, you get immunity by way of interacting with other people, because it has to build up, it has to get a little bit stronger. But you suspend them into their home, it ends up festering and building up. So by the time they get out to the wider world, it spreads like wildfire. So whatever. And so, yeah, when this happens, the person who owned these apartments or owned the homes, they had to file for bankruptcy. They give it up to the banks. This past October in 2021, the third quarter of 2021 specifically, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan and Chase, these banking entities, they took all the debt that they had to, that the people like us had to give to them by way of the PPP loans, stimulus checks, all these type of stuff, all these handouts. And they didn't make any new net profit, the banks. They pretty much made big revenue, but it wasn't new money. It was the old money from the debt that was passed from the federal government to people's pockets and to the banks. And what the banks have done, they end up taking that debt and they hedge themselves against the losses from the COVID-19 pandemic. So in other words, they were bought off. They were bought off and they were deemed too big to fail, just like in the 2008 market crash, where you had these big corporations getting corporate welfare from the federal government, giving them money to stay afloat, even when the people do not consent to the business still being practiced. Because the people vote, we vote with our dollar. If we don't want this business there, we're not going to go there. We're not going to patronize them. We're just not going to give them our money. And that's supposed to dictate whether a business succeeds or if a business fails. But leave it to the federal government. they can just funnel money into this zombie entity and it will still continue on, whether you like it or not. And we're going to foot the bill by way of our tax dollars, which creates market manipulation. So this is what happened in the housing market. Now, in the same month of October, we had about a month's worth of inventory in the housing market, which means that there was only a month's worth of houses that were available to be sold. And as soon as they were on the market, there was a record of when they were bought off. It was like 19 days they were on the market and then they were immediately bought off. But it wasn't from people like you and I who were just trying to, make a way for ourselves and buy these properties. It was investors. It was bigger corporations coming from the northern regions who are taking the salaries from their corporations, but coming into Florida because there was no state tax. So they can go ahead and just make more money and still get paid buying up these homes and these properties. So we have our hands tied behind our backs, not being able to compete within the same market because of government manipulating the markets. So I hope that answers
And
your
I would
question.
like to say this. I love the fact that you said, let's pay attention to the words, because even the
Mm-hmm.
Bible says to work your words. And I'm noticing in a lot of contracts and government guidelines, it's a lot of words we're not familiar with. That's like
Yeah.
even with voting, you know a few of the words, but it's a lot of words on that ballot you don't understand. But
Mm-hmm.
you be led to go towards what you do understand, not understanding that those other words may be a loophole, those other words may be taking you somewhere else. So for us
Precisely.
to be
There's a lot of
mindful.
there's a lot of legalese. There's a lot of fork tonguing, and there's a lot of legal fictions that are within these papers that they serve us, and they don't educate us because they don't want to create educated voters. They don't want to create educated consumers, and so that's why we end up getting um, the bad end of the stick most of the time. And then we want to say this, this model within itself is inefficient. No, it's really not, because local governance is the most powerful form of governance. The one time that your vote is going to be counted is in the local elections. And we want to say that there's a lot of voter fraud. I mean, yeah, there's always been a history of voter fraud, for a very long time. But when there's smaller representation ratios, the more accountability there is. It's going to be a lot harder to have people get swindled out of their vote because it's so small. That's why in these national elections, they're trying to not monetize, but nationalize the elections. They had these HRs, these House resolutions that came out. I forget the specific number. I can put it, I can give it to you, and you can put it into a link under this interview, and it was going to show you how they planned on nationalizing these votes by putting a lot of illegal practices within these, and then they create a narrative within disparaged communities. Of course, such as the African American communities, where they say that there's what they say, voter discrimination. They're trying to stop Black people from voting. I don't know why we try to attach ourselves to these narratives, because I mean, how did Obama get into office? How did Joe Biden get into office? How did any of these people get into office if it wasn't for the Black vote? They need the Black vote for all this time in order for them to get into office in the first place. I think about 34% of it. So I don't understand how they're keeping us from voting. I don't understand that. But like I said, you gotta be careful of how they try to pop in a narrative that they use us to jump on and get people riled up in order to create a new wave of segregation, or some new way of
Some
civil
form of
rights.
separation. Yeah.
Some
Separation
new,
for
you know what I'm saying?
some
I mean,
reason.
we all seen the PBS specials in black and white where this happened back in that time, but we want to have that moment again today, but it's not going to happen. We just have to be cognizant of the schemes that they play to play with our heads and play with our hearts and play with our emotions, to say, oh, if the government says we're being discriminated in this way, now we're going to plant agitators who are going to instigate an issue that doesn't exist, so that we can allow the federal government to continue their expansion by way of the welfare state into implementing their powers onto the local governance. Because the more we keep allowing them to come into our lives, we lose our sovereignty as citizens of Jacksonville. And
Amen.
so yeah, that's what it is. So that's why I tell people, vote locally, think locally, and act locally, because that's where it's gonna count. But the problem is, a lot of people, once they get into office, they pray for more federal dollars to drip through the state and into the city so that they can get, whatever project that they want to get done to pay off the lobbyists that put them inside the seats in the first place. So that's not
Mhm.
what that's things we have to consider, because they have to have someone to give them the loan and they got to have someone else to foot the bill, which is me and you. And so once I get in there, again, is to protect my constituents and my people in District 8 from government expansion and prioritize first and foremost local innovation, local industry, local everything. The more we render ourselves independent and self-sufficient, then we don't have to keep begging for government subsidies to come in. Because, for example, those that took the money during the CARES Act, that's when they had to shut down the business for a while to put in new septic, installations for the health. They have to make their employees, if they have 100 or more, um, be be vaccinated in order to continue to work. Otherwise, their business will get shut down. I mean, there's a caveat to all of this. We have to realize that, yeah, we can take federal money, but at what cost? You know. So yeah.
And then why is it so freely given? But we're not going to, I'm going to lay off of that because, I can go somewhere with that. I can really go somewhere.
that
Ooh, now tell us
could be a
about this. That could be
yeah.
a whole nother show. If we really zoomed in on the government issues, the issues that we as a nation have. It's
Hmm.
not just a certain person. It's like humanity must
Yes,
become
ma'am.
aware of some things.
Hmm.
But we're gonna tune in and tap into this taxation in Jacksonville. We're gonna stay in Jacksonville today.
That's right. We're gonna stay local. That's where it is because it's hard enough to try to get local news and what's happening in our city, but that's where all the treachery happens. And I would definitely advise people to go ahead and keep tuning in to local issues. That's why I made the videos that I was making for a while about the issues happening in Jacksonville. Go to newsforjax.com. I see these things and I try to bring my perspective into the forefront, but how we should be thinking about these things. Like for example, you have the Downtown Investment Authority trying to appropriate money from the people of Jacksonville to have all these projects allocated to one area, while you got the whole city to think about. I'm not going to be taking, I don't want my tax money to be taken for this one area to be developed when we have a whole city to consider. And people that barely go to downtown, they're not going to benefit from that. So with unjust taxation, a lot of problems can be started because yeah. And there's another example of it is they wanted to bring a home to suites hotel, another area in Jacksonville. Now they already have one over there on the south side, I believe in the Bay Meadows area, if I'm not mistaken. I have the video on my Facebook. But even the ones who were on the board, they said, we really don't need to appropriate more tax money that to expand our reach within Jacksonville. But it was the fact that they even gave it a question. The fact that it was a topic of discussion was appalling because nothing should be expanded unless it comes from the revenue from that entity within itself. Because, like I said earlier, if people voted you with their dollar to remain and to expand, then go ahead and do that. You have to see where the market is first before you just appropriate someone's money.
Okay. Now, this is what I've heard. This is what I'm hearing.
Hmm.
Are we tuning into or tapping into redlining, talking about taxation?
Yeah,
Is
absolutely, absolutely, because it's all a part of that. It goes into one of those things that is that the consolidation in 1968 of Jacksonville and Duval County, where that has failed, is the fact that you have all these areas coming in being consolidated to one ruling municipal body, excuse me, but with everyone paying the same taxes. Now you have a whole new fresh tax base. This one area is still being, you know, unfulfilled. It's being dilapidated. It's being put in, under the radar, and it shouldn't be happening for no reason at all. And that's why I say taxation is theft on that level to where, you know, you consolidate everybody into one house. Everybody should all benefit within that house. But when it doesn't happen, then there's an issue, then there's a problem. We can make it a lot better than what it is right now. And that's why I prioritize local initiatives, because the more we beg in City Hall and go there and vent for 3 minutes about a decision they've already made for us, you know, it's not going to give us the incentive at all. I'm not really for going down to City Hall and talking too much anyway. I'm always about the initiative of go ahead and doing a lot more than what we can say, because showing people what we can do and we have the potential to do is a lot more effective. That's why I fix potholes around the city of Jacksonville. I got a pothole that I'm fixing tomorrow anyway. And it's off the fact that I'm not trying to show off. It's to show the people that the government is not this omnipotent, omniscient being that can just loom over the city and be everywhere all, at one time. It can't be everywhere at one time. That's why it's important for us to take the initiative that they're not going to. Because if they already got our tax money, there's no incentive for them to do anything because they're already paid. When in any area of your life do you keep paying somebody to not do a job? Doesn't make any sense. You pay a roofer to put a roof over your house to fix up the roof or something like that, and he doesn't come by ever, but you keep funneling him money every week. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It's essentially what government does. They're going to sit there and take their sweet time because they know that you're going to pay your tax dollars or else, what I mean? And they can just pretty much chill out. So there should be no reason why we have these systems in place where if I don't give my money voluntarily, that there is coercion coming at the end of that. There's a bayonet coming at the end of that. They can get some people knocking at my door at the end of that. It shouldn't be that at all. It should be voluntary. It should be consensual, like I'm just saying with everything else. And it should be on a user basis. If I want to, like, go to the expressway, you want to take the express aisle to go, to avoid traffic. That makes a lot more sense because you're using that for your benefit to get to somewhere a lot more convenient. And then you get a price tag on it based off of your participation within that convenience. Should be the same way with taxation, for the most part, until we can remove it completely. It should be to a place where, based on your participation and what you use, then you get the benefit of that. And then everybody else can voluntarily pay by way of their usage, or if they want to pledge a certain amount of money every month, for the benefit, they can go ahead and do that. But the ones who don't use that don't really want it, they don't have to have anything to do with it. And that's what the benefits of what it can be, but that's not what we have. And so with redlining, we have people that's paying the same tax dollars, but we're just sitting here suffering, with food deserts and, infrastructure is just horrible. I mean, come on now. So, yeah.
So what would be some of your suggestions on that?
Well,
Because
some of
I
my
know
suggestions.
we talked about the trash, getting another entity to come in and handle the trash. So can you
Yeah,
kind of tell the viewers about that?
there's a company called Recyclops that I'm working with who are going to get your recycling, and for a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription, you can go ahead and sign on with them, and they come and they handle that work. They're going to start operating in February the 18th. So my job is to go ahead and, when I'm canvassing, go to more areas to create more routes so they can clean up some more places around the city. Because I mean, we shouldn't be having these trash sites. I think there's about 15 trash sites to put around the city of Jacksonville. There should be no reason we should be having that. Back this past December, we spent about $142,000 on operating these trash sites because we had to pay the federal workers, a little bit of overtime to operate them, to get them regulated. Instead of just doing the job right the first time, they would rather use some more of our money to treat the Band-Aid as opposed to treating the wound itself. So with Recyclops, that's what I'm doing. I'm it'll create more employment opportunities as well, because the more routes that are created, the more incentive it'll give the people when they have their cars or their trucks to go and pick up these recycling. They can make up to $25 an hour. There's a great employment opportunity here if we go ahead and get these routes set up. So by the time February the 18th comes, they come through, they claim the recycling in our neighborhoods and all around Jacksonville, we'll be much better off. And then it'll put much more pressure on the municipal government to say, hey, look, we're going to need that tax refund now, because if you're not going to do the job, you're going to be rendered as fired, and then so go and give our money back, and then you can go ahead and just move on, do your merry thing, do your legislation, do what you got to do, talk to certain people, whatever. But we're going to move on. There should be no reason why we're stuck in a stasis or in purgatory because you can't get it right. When just as easily as I have, go find another company that can bring free market competition and voluntary solutions to an issue that you started. So that's what it's all about.
I
As
will
me
say
being,
this.
mhm,
As a nation, I feel like we are so used to people telling us what to do till we have forgotten how to think for ourselves.
absolutely.
Like
And
thinking has just been dismissed, and we're going to sit back and we're going to wait for somebody else to fix it. We're going to
mhm,
wait for something to I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who's going to do it, and I'm like, come on now. We have got to get out of this box, because the box that we're in because of that same thought process. No one is going to
absolutely.
save us but us.
Hmm. Yes, ma'am. And no one knows better than the people that lives in the area where the situation is happening. You go and talk to the people themselves, they can give you a solution right off the bat. People are, yo, man, Jacksonville is filled with so many geniuses and so many talented people. You just like me. We had the town hall meeting a few days ago, and there were so many people bringing so many great ideas and things to uplift us as a people in this
Mhm.
city that, I mean, I was honored to be there. Really, it was really exciting for me because, all right, cool. These are people that I'm representing. These are my constituents. These are the ones that I'm going to proudly represent once I get in there.
Mhm.
And because here's the thing, here's my model. I'm not going to be going to outside sources to give you a solution to a problem in our area. There should be no reason for that. The most that I can do is tap you to the resources that'll be made available to me where I can direct them and say, okay, go ahead, go there. But I'm not going to, you know, make a decision outright because I don't know everything. I'm not no specialist in all these different myriads of
Yeah.
fields. Like I said, um I'm not omnipotent. I'm not, I don't know everything, you know. And
But then the key is to be around. This is Latuska speaking. The key is to be around people that, okay, where two people come together, I may not be as good as uh, Lisa about looking up laws. You know what I'm
that's right.
saying? Or I
Hmm.
may not know too much about economics. So then I got somebody over here that knows about that. I may
That's
not
right.
know too much about this, but I know it's somebody beside me that can help me
Hmm.
along the way. So as long as we stand beside each other, we can keep,
Hmm.
every step we take. Hey, I don't care who's standing in the front, but baby, we keep moving because somebody got to go up to the front because now you got the answer for it. Now you got the answer for it. You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
if we
It's
don't
just like the
draw
Roman,
together,
it's like in the Roman military, they had the Roman legions and they had a formation called the phalanx formation, where it was just that. It was everyone in this that created this wall and everyone standing right next to each other and they move forward, with the operation. And everybody's saying that movie 300. It's the very same concept. And so, yeah, I have someone who specializes in engineering, specialize in um, aquifers, specialize in, like you said, economics, people that specialize in legislation. We bring these heads together, we can create something extremely beautiful. And but having more government intrusion, it stalls that process. It kills the morale, it kills innovation because you have to go through so many bureaucrats, to go
okay.
and say, all right, well, let me talk to this person. Let me go and talk. We're going to have another few meetings down the line, and maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe it's not. Even though for something as simple as a tax refund on a service that we're not getting, you just go people who are just into the market in the private sector. They're going to say the same thing. It's common sense. If we're not getting the service, then I shouldn't be paying you my money. But you go through more government bureaucrats, it complicates the situation, and the situation steadily gets worse because now we're at a point that we're paying the city for our cities to look like trash, for our neighborhoods to look like a slum village. And it's bringing down the property value, it's bringing down, what I'm saying? I mean, everything, tax revenue was going down because the way it's just looking. And it's from the government putting more salt on the wound as opposed to treating it, you know. And so to prevent this, my model will have to be more local solutions to these problems. And if it can be funded for the people who voluntarily want to put their heads together, like how we were talking about in that town hall meeting with that was coordinated by um, Anthony
Anthony Brown.
Brown Anthony Brown and Pastor Dawson. And I mean, these guys are on point. They're very on point with that. They're
On
all about
fire.
people coming. Yeah. people
Mhm.
coming together and really using their talents to make a change. And I definitely appreciate them for what they've taught me. And it's always been an honor going and meeting up with these guys, and especially you as well, to get an opportunity to go ahead and build on that perspective. So definitely. And if I'm to be elected by you people, I have to be there in these meetings. I have to be there getting all this information and not going to whatever lobbyist or whatever type of big corporation that just want to say, hey man, we're going to put you in this seat. But in order to do that, I got to have a deal with it. I got to have a deal for myself. There got to be something in it for me. And of
Mhm.
course, it's going to go opposite to the will of the ones who call on me to represent them. So
Yes.
that's what it's all
Okay.
about.
Now
hmm
tell us a little bit about the unfunded retirement obligations of the elderly.
Man, with that situation, like I said, I'm not exactly elderly, so I don't know every little minute detail of it, but I do know for a fact um starting in January of this year, Medicare went up by 16%. It became a lot more expensive. And Social Security office, they just announced that they're going to give out about 5% more in Social Security benefits. But the thing about it is, if you're going to charge people 16% more in Medicare, that 5% is not going to mean anything. And back in October, the about 33% of elderly from ages 61 to 65, they had no money for their retirement. They had no money. In a lot of their situations, it was because of, like I said before, with the CDC moratorium, how they had to foreclose on their homes, in order, to that they were banking on to go ahead and fund their retirement so they can vacation, they can live their life, put up that mom and pop shop, and pass it on down to the children. All that was derailed because of government intervention. And so now they're going to be paying the price. They're going to be working for who knows how long. There shouldn't be no reason why I'm seeing elderly people working entry level jobs just so they can get by. I don't get that. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I've seen it here and there a few years ago, but now I see it in droves, and that's where it's coming from. Is the fact that they're taxing us new ligaments every other day with the gas tax, the um, the sales tax with the half-cent increase in that. That's going to these schools, but none of it is going to the students and helping with their education. It's going and being funneled to all these shadow corporations and nonprofit organizations that are taking the money and doing the opposite of what they were supposed to do with it. So that's another thing. And so with that, that contributes to the biggest hole of Jacksonville's debt. Jacksonville is $2.8 billion in debt, and a lot of that comes from unfunded retiree obligations. So what we should do is, with these local initiatives, prioritize our elders a lot more by prioritizing um, money that's going to be coming to us and not coming from the government. Like I said, the less power that we give to them, they're going to keep taking and taking, taking and taking away. And now they made it much more expensive in the tax bracket of the IRS. When you file your taxes, a lot of things are going to be a lot more expensive because now we've reached a whole new tax bracket because of the benefits that we've been getting, the stimulus checks that we've been getting, and it's going to have to come out of our pockets in some way, shape, or form. And they're coming after their retirement. They're coming after Social Security. They say by the time 20, I believe 2035 or 2040, you know, Social Security is going to be spent. I mean, I know there's been talk about Social Security going bankrupt for a long time,
Mhm.
but they have to consider the inflation rate that's as high as it is. They have to consider the shortage of new businesses being created. They have to consider the employment is the minimum wage keeps going up, so taxation is going to go up, and so that's never good. So um, it all comes full circle. That's why I say the more we let them in, the more they'll take away from us. And the unfunded retiree obligations is another big example of that. And the fact that 33% of the ones that are from 61 and 65 have no money saved up for their retirement,
Mhm.
that speaks volumes. It really does. So there's little opportunities for people of many age ranges. 17% of Jacksonville's population is made up of ages 34 to 55, I believe. So by the time that I get into retirement age, there's going to be pretty much nothing there for me. It's going to be spent up. And
Mm.
so that's why that system, which was a flaw, in itself, it has definitely shown its colors as, hey, this was a model to misappropriate the money supposed to go to our elders who give their service in the workforce, and now it's going to go to government subsidies that that we don't need. That it's not coming back to our pockets, fulfilling the needs that the community wants. So, yeah,
Now let me ask you, Social Security was created back in what year was it? Because it started after World War II, right?
I believe so. I believe either World War I or World War II. They brought in Social Security, and they centralized, um, retirement obligations for the elderly. And but what it did was it created a whole new tax class, and it's another way of taking the money from the elderly and putting it in other places where it doesn't need to go. Like, for example, when it came to the PPP loans being passed out to the businesses so that they can stay afloat, there was an article saying that there were so many businesses being created, brand new businesses. Everyone is thriving under COVID. COVID-19 is awesome. But what they were not saying was that if you de-aggregate the data and de-aggregate the charts of these new businesses being created, these businesses practice fraudulent practices. They weren't new businesses at all. They were just entities wanting to get a quick check from the government, and they had ridiculous names and ridiculous LLCs for their little corporations, and then they would get out of Dodge. And so, same thing with Social Security. It creates more room for fraudulent practices, more room for money not going to the elderly, because now if the money is funded by the central government as opposed to people's own independent money that they're making for themselves as they're going through the workforce from their own entities that they can make. I mean, how can you try to promise them Social Security when you took their homes? You're gonna take people's homes away, but they want to guarantee Social Security. It doesn't make any sense. Those two they don't compute. The more you rely on the government to take care of you, the more that they're gonna do the complete opposite.
Okay.
And they're just trying to allocate debt from this place and that place in order to cure it. If we're $30 trillion in debt right now, so they're going to go tap into Social Security, they're going to go tap into Medicare, they're going to tap into these places where they can say, all right, cool, we're just going to dip into the pot right here, I'm going to put my hand in the cookie jar, but I promise I'm gonna pay it down the line a little bit later. And
Misappropriate the funds.
yeah, you're just misappropriating the funds. You got to balance your checkbook, man. There's got to be more checks and balances when it comes to central authority, if you're going to have that at all. And so, yeah, that's not happening. So with the unfunded retiree obligations, that's just another symptom of that issue. And I plan to make a video delving into that a little bit more, because Anthony Fauci, he is the one that's pretty much Saint Fauci, the one that the CDC props as your god for everything concerning health. He is the highest paid federal employee in the history of the profession. When he retires, he's going to get about $500,000 in compensation. In the meantime, we sit here, we can't even get a dime, two dimes to rub together. So that should show the priority that they place on federal employees above the private sector. If we don't have anything for ourselves, then we're just going to be dust. We're going to be dust bunnies. But people like Fauci and these federal employees are getting money from the government for the rest of their lives, really from the taxpayers for the rest of their lives until they die.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Clearly it's not affecting him. The Medicare going up and the Social Security is not meeting up to the standards of the new inflation and the new wages being increased. It's not going to affect him at all, but it's affecting us. And so by the time I become 65 years old, God's will it, then what's the point? So the Social Security, it should not be one of those biggest priorities when it comes to retirement. We should have independent ways of settling our retirement that'll come from more ingenuity within our own private markets that we have to create for ourselves to bring the results that we want.
Okay. Now, before we go, I need you to tell everybody about what is going on with you this weekend, especially that pothole filling that you'll be
The
doing, and how we
having
can help you and assist you in doing even more.
Absolutely. I'm facing a pothole tomorrow at Arrow Point Drive, I believe it is. It's right off St. Augustine Road. I have the event on my campaign page. Why don't Tracy Robison for Jacksonville City Council? You can go there, or you can type in the initials RTR4CC, the number four, RTR number 4CC. Press enter, and then my page will come right up. And once you go to the event page, it'll give you the directions of where it is, what time it starts. It'll be starting at 2 p.m. And what we're going to be bringing is the asphalt, the tamper to level off the asphalt, some cones to direct traffic, make sure we're doing it safely and responsibly, and a few extra buckets for the to put the gravel and the sand, all that kind of stuff to put inside there so we can clean it out properly, and safety goggles, gloves, things of that nature. And it's going to be fun. And what I would hope to do, what I'm doing right now is creating a website for the pothole operation so that people can willingly donate to have this continue and to keep going, because we have to take the initiative for ourselves to get our roads fixed up. I mean, if they're going to make these cars go to standard for the roads got to be in standard for the cars. And and the more we do this, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to bring a lot more optics our way in saying, hey, we're giving a service to our people that hasn't been given by the local government. So it's going to call for more of the ask of giving us a tax refund if you're not going to be doing the job. Go ahead and give me, go ahead and give me those funds, and I can do something much more better. I mean, the last time we did it, it was only 350 pounds of asphalt, which is 7 bags of it, and 30 minutes. That's it, you know? And you see the photo, you see the pictures. It was went from this little hole into a big behind little crater. And then we filled it up, then we finished it off, and that was it. I make sure I tag the city of Jacksonville to it to let them see, put some fire up under them to show that, hey, you got competition in the city now. Because if we don't have any competition for these services they're supposed to be giving us, then they're gonna do whatever they want with us. They're not gonna be motivated. So it's our job to go ahead and motivate them. So I want to put a website together. I'm gonna have it done by the end of next week. It's for people to go and pledge a certain amount, like a monthly subscription on Netflix or Patreon or whatever. You put in a certain amount, you get different perks, and it'll be a way to have it publicly funded for those that consent to the job. Like I say, it's not going to be taxation. It's going to be voluntary contribution. It's going to be more charity. It's going to be more, okay, cool, I want this service done, so I'm going to pay for this. It'll go to my supplies, or it'll go to scouting the city, to finding some more. And the more sophisticated that it becomes, it will be much more efficient. So that's where the funding is going to go from the viewers of this interview. If you want to see that happen within a city, I'm going to have the information updated on my website and on my campaign Facebook page of what I'm going to do with that website, so you can be willing to voluntarily donate. I mean, you can go to ronaldtracyforjax.com and go and hit the donation tab and give a in-kind donation to do it right now. But for something that specific, I'm going to create a whole nother space for it so that it can be much more direct.
Okay, now have you thought about, and this is only something that I thought about, finding a Black-owned concrete company and getting some quotes?
That'll be you said quotes?
Just to get some quotes. You give them X amount of potholes you may want to do within a month. And, because we all have these little write-offs and we want to contribute stuff,
Right.
To do it through a company could be, a little swifter. I don't know. Because
that's a good idea.
It depends on the person's heart. You got to, if you never ask, you never know.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And we can talk some more about it and get into a little bit more detail, because I'm always willing to collaborate with people who will move forward with this process. And that's something I never considered. That's why, like you say, we surround ourselves with people that can contribute great ideas for the goal ahead, and we create something beautiful and something really efficient and fortified, and it's going to get things done. And so I would like to contact more Black-owned industries that I can get a quote from and move on to the next stage, because overall it's about networking. It's about connecting with people that want the same thing that we want. We want our communities to be cleaned up. But apparently, if the city is not going to do it, we got to take it upon ourselves to go ahead and get that initiated. So I'll be definitely glad to do that. We can talk more about it at the end of this interview. So yeah, definitely.
And then I will say this, this is one of the things that I say a lot to people. At the end of the day, you got to understand this is where we live. I don't just live here on this planet by myself.
Right.
You know, we live here on this planet together, and together is going to take us to be in a harmonious way. To put
Mm-hmm.
all that ego and all of that other stuff aside, kumbaya for a few minutes in time. It's not going to hurt us to get the jobs done. Some of the jobs are so minute till I'm like you, why even go to the government to do that? You know, you can go to a nursery and get some of the stuff that they're throwing away. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a
Right.
green hand, you can bring them things back to life and beautify your neighborhood. You know, it's a way to
Exactly.
do anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, speaking of Kumbaya and landscaping, I know a landscaper. He has a company called Kumbaya Gardens. His name is Latroy Watson, and I'm gonna plug him to you and plug him to the group so that we can all, be in touch with him, and so he can come out and do his work. He's a very great landscaper. He does a lot of beautification within the neighborhoods, and he'll be a great asset. He's really talented at what he does. And yeah, so I just wanted to plug him in real quick. He's a good friend of mine, known him for a long time. And yeah, he's a very talented man, and he'll be a great asset to what we're doing. And he'll be a living example of that. That's what we need more. We need more people to bring and lead by example. Because it's one thing to talk about it, you know, talk about economics and landscaping and engineering, blah blah. But if you don't have people to go ahead and do it, to be the example of it, because people are much more visual than hearing about these words and terms I've been talking about for the past hour. They have to see it for
Mhm.
themselves and make the call for themselves, about what's valuable to them. Me being a libertarian in Jacksonville, Florida, me and the Libertarian Party of Duval County, we always want to prioritize adding value to our community as opposed to just talking. We can do that all day at a time when the work is finished or when they want to hear it. But for right now, there's work to do. And that's what we prioritize first and foremost. And that's why I say, is this liberty without permission? I made a video
Mhm.
about the definition of what liberty without permission means. It's not about going to City Hall or even protesting and throwing Molotov cocktails and causing a ruckus just to make a scene or
Mhm.
instigating agitation. But it's about putting in the work. You got to put your money where your mouth is. You got to put your hands to the ground and make things happen. Like how you say, make things come to life. And when we do that, by how they experience us, then we'll get them thinking. They have to experience it first before they make any conclusions. Because me being a libertarian candidate, again, I have a higher burden of performance. Say he's not a Republican, he's not a Democrat. Where does he fall? You know, I mean, I'm in an area where I'm expected to be, of course, a Democrat.
Mhm.
In District 8, it's very highly expected of me. The sitting incumbent of District 8 is a Democrat, and being black and Democrat is kind of synonymous. But but for me, it's not because what the GOP does, and I have no problem with people within the GOP, the grand old parties, red or
Mhm.
blue. It's just that at the end of the day, much more than likely, they're going to vie for more government power. They're going to vie for more government intrusion in some way, shape, or form. One of the people that's running for that large position, I forget which one it is. They're already asking for federal funding. They're already asking for, government to extend its power to get things done. When you can just really talk to the people that's within the communities, you get the answer for yourself. Then you can work within that to bring a solution that's more, bring more fruit, much more efficacious to the overall process. For me, I prioritize think locally and act locally on all spheres, you know, and then yeah, that's about it. It's really a simple approach. Think locally, act locally, free market competition, volunteerism, and self initiative. That's it. That's why I say, hey, with all this protesting and bomb throwing and stuff like that, get your banner signs, get it all, get it all out your chest. That's really good. But if your end goal is just to get up and get arrested and hauled off out of outside of a building because you're making a scene, I mean, dude, come on, that's just it's ridiculous. So we're gonna move on from that. We're in a new age right now. We're in an age where we've seen all this millions of times. We've seen this the PBS specials of these movements in black and white, the Panther Party and all this
Mhm.
stuff. I know we want to riot and make ourselves like we're doing something because of what we've seen growing up. I mean, that's all good. It's all fine and dandy, but we don't do that no more. It's
Mhm.
about action now, taking human action. It's easy to gather people in the area and shout. We can do that. We can do it all day. That's fine. I like concerts like the next person. I like gathering around and screaming to the top of my lungs into the air as much as the next person. But we're civilized. We have the liberty to be civilized. We have the liberty to lead ourselves. We have the liberty to learn. We have the liberty to actually put the work in and manifest something much more better that's going to leave our city better than what it is the way we found it. So that's
And
what
the
I'm about.
crazy part about it is, guess how long we have had this liberty? Our whole
For a,
entire
lo-
life.
for a long time. For a long
Our
time.
whole lives, we have been free. But
Mm-hmm.
because we did not know ourselves as free,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because we really don't understand the law. That's number one. We really truly don't understand the law and what we're dealing with. We
Right.
don't understand the words, because if we understood the words of the Bible, we would understand that we were born free. We were
Mm-hmm.
born liberated. And then the change began to, the creation of the change came after, we took our first breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
I'm so happy to say that we were created for such a time as this. You and I, Anthony, Pastor Dawson, um, was Bert Eagle, the
Mm-hmm.
African American Economic Relief Think Tank,
Mm-hmm.
real people that are using their real brains to come together to solve problems.
That's right. That's right. And not
So
and not begging. We've been begging for a long time. It's time to change the trajectory. You know, we need to show them that, hey, yeah, we can actually, yes, pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. We just got to take the initiatives and get the fear out of it all. No one's stopping me from filling potholes. No one's stopping me from bringing recycling back to Jacksonville. No one is stopping me from doing anything.
mhm.
It's just the fact that you just got to take the initiative and get the fear out of your mind and realize that either you can affect the world or the world can be, or you can be affected by the world.
There we go, or vice versa.
Yeah.
I agree. I
Or either
agree.
way. So the world doesn't spin unless we do something. And if we're going to sit in a stasis like we're in purgatory and keep talking about some white man, some Jews, some all this type of, what I mean? We keep worrying about this type of stuff. I mean, fine, great, what I mean? But no one's stopping us from having this talk. No one's stopping us from having this interview. No one's stopping us from congregating. No one is stopping us from doing all this stuff. We know that no one's stopping us from complaining. We know that much.
Mhm.
No one is
And
stopping us from
no one is gonna stop us from solving it either.
exactly,
No one
exactly,
can stop us from solving the issues. No one can stop us but us. If we feel like it's
That's
getting
right.
a little bit too hard, that would
Hmm.
stop us. Or we feel like we
That's
don't
right.
have enough support. That would stop us. But I will tell you, as long as you're on a mission and your heart is in the right place, the right people will pop up at the right time, all the
Absolutely.
time. Some can
Hmm.
fall off and they can stay off because it's going to be a new crew come in to take you a little bit further than where you
Hmm.
are. So I
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
thank you for coming on the show. You have blessed our hearts today, and this is what I do. So I hope you accept it. Okay.
Absolutely. I sure will. Hope you accept
Our
mine too.
Fa-
I appreciate this interview.
I got to tell you, our Father, we pray today over Ronald Tracy Robinson. We thank you for creating him for such a time as this. We thank you for his beautiful mind and every action that he takes for the people because he is of the people. Thank you for blessing him and lighting the pathway so that he may see the next move. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. And I appreciate you,
Appreciate you as well. Thanks for talking to me.
all the time.
Absolutely.
Tracy Robinson. He is running for Duval District 8, right?
That's right.
Duval
Jacksonville City
District 8.
Council, District 8. Yes, indeed.
That's right, City Council. So follow him because
Mhm.
he has gifted us with this interview. But he has a lot of interviews that you guys should be aware of. He's a little bit of everywhere all the time. I don't know how he does it, but he pops up. He'll pop up and pop out and be somewhere else in a heartbeat.
Right.
So you just have to keep an eye out on him.
Yes,
All right,
ma'am. And
everybody. You guys have a blessed night, and I will see you
absolutely.
later.